Well, we've spent 3 years on it every second of the day, so we can't really pick any of them. They're all... We don't put anything on there unless we think it's bonkersly brilliant.
Low was a turning point for me anyway. Up until that point I didn't really feel like I'd done anything that was any good. And so it was the first time that... And we were all in the rehearsal room again, and that then I got really excited that I thought, I can actually contribute something that's all right. So that was a real turning point for me. It's in the other albums, it's just quieter. They turned me down.
We did make a decision to turn Jonny up. A definite decision. Because I got sick of seeing Chris Martin, Coldplay, thinking, well, that's not really fair. Because I certainly survived because of the other three in the band, So I got sick of seeing that, and I got sick of people not acknowledging Jonny for being the best. He's for me, Edge and Jonny Greenwood and Jonny are the best three guitarists in the world, but he's the one I'd like to work with most. And I got sick of people not agreeing. Well, it's true though. Of not seeing that, because he's very humble and quite shy, except around certain ladies. But he is. Yeah. And also his guitar tech, Matt, sort of came over to me. Matt's this lovely sort of Cockney guy. He's like, make sure you turn Jonny up this album, Chris. So that's what we did. I think fame is kind of nonsense, and I have a whole other side of fame which I'm not that into because of things in my private life. So I don't. The type of fame that Coldplay has is amazing, but it's nothing to do with being recognised on the street or being in the Daily Record or whatever it is. That stuff I don't really mind. When the private life becoming famous is not that cool, but if that's the biggest thing you've got to worry about, you've got a pretty great life. But it isn't. There's two very different types of fame, is what we're trying to say. One is being known for making albums, and one is people following you around when you're in the supermarket. And the one is great, and the other one is,
I think we're still very lucky in that our band is much more famous than we are, generally. Certainly me, anyway. So I don't really feel any bad effects from I just think it's great. There's no I've got nothing to complain about ever. Generally, Chris will bring them in either on acoustic, piano, or electric, or whatever, or harmonica, or and then
or with a male voice choir.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's not true, because we one song came from. We don't like to say the word jam, really, but occasionally we write from a jam. The word jam doesn't sound great coming out of a middle-class voice. If you say, this song came from a jam, it sounds cool. But if you say, this song came from us jamming, it sounds really kind of silly. You sound like a sort of trendy, businessman.
Just show off in front of each other, I suppose, until the other person likes it. That's basically it.
Jonny will keep playing until I get completely overexcited.
I'll play something that I think is brilliant and it'll really annoy me that he doesn't like it, and so I have to do another 50 things.
It is annoying when it's particularly annoying when Will or Guy don't like something, because they don't tell you they don't like it, they just show absolutely zero interest. So Will will be like, and if Will moves to the guitar or something, if Will leaves the drum kit, then you know that the song's no good, because he's not interested in playing drums. If he suddenly picks up a flute or something, or he's got one of those Irish whistles, if Will picks up his Irish tin whistle and starts playing it, you know that you have to change the song you're playing, because he doesn't like it.
Worked with Ken, and we hadn't got a finished album at the end of it.
But we've done a lot of very valuable stuff.
Yeah.
The finished record is a combination of stuff we did with Ken, stuff we did with Danton Supple. So to say that we got rid of Ken, it's nonsense. We did a massive chunk of work with him, and we could never have got to the finished album without that chunk of work. But probably he would say that we had to well, we had to go and try something different just because we were getting a bit lost. Not with him, but just as a band.
We'd really gone about the first year in a slightly wrong way, I think. We hadn't, we just weren't close enough as a unit, and we hadn't really played a lot of the songs together. We were perhaps building the songs backwards, you know, very much in studio land, rather than going into the rehearsal room and just knocking them out. And we were kind of just layering them, really, and you lose a lot of feel.
But also, we were writing a lot of songs.
Yeah, exactly.
So with Ken, we really went through a filtering process, you know. So he was amazing with us because we presented him with 50 songs. He would say.
Pulled them down.
Ken Nelson is one of those people who can politely tell you that you're terrible, and you don't mind because he's such a lovely man.
We hope to make the greatest album ever. I don't think there's any point aiming for anything less.
When you've had, I think when you've had that celebrity and awards and all that stuff and money, it's all brilliant, you know. But really, you realise that that's not the most fulfilling side of it. And what is fulfilling is finding some amazing new tune, or just the thing that I enjoy most still is the four of us just being close together physically as well as emotionally, and playing and writing. And so going into this record, that was even more the focus than before, because whilst Grammys and, you know, all that stuff is amazing, it's not really the thing that's the most fulfilling.
We'd been writing on the road, so we had, and playing in sound checks, and so we had a year's worth of writing already. Definitely
the two of us, and probably the other two of us, feel like we can't quite, although we can believe where we are because we believe in ourselves immensely, we can't quite believe that anybody else believes in us. So we're always trying to write the best next song so that we've always got something else to validate where we are.
We felt like a new band again, I think. Really having to prove ourselves.
Yeah. It happened on the last album, it definitely happened on this album, that we feel like the album that we're making at the moment has to validate any success that we've already had, but at the same time, you know, say fuck you to people who didn't like us. You know, it's a twin-pronged. Twin, is that a right phrase? Twin-pronged. We're always worried about something or other. I think if you're not worried, then you should be worried. Which is, of course, great, because when you aren't worried, you start worrying.
Yeah.
So you're never not worried. So you should never worry.
The realisation that the album had to be finished at some point soon, and that it wasn't there yet. It wasn't as good as we wanted it to be at that point, and so then the real sort of.
You need a deadline, you know.
Yeah.
If you're running in a race, you need to know where the finish line is to make sure that you overtake the people in front of you in time. Otherwise, you think, I'll catch them on lap 30. Not that I've ever run 30 laps, but you need to know there's a finish point so that you really push yourself. Even though whenever we set a finish point, we always move it a bit anyway. And you know, the bigger you are as a band, the more freedom you have to say, actually, can we change the deadline? But we do need deadlines, and so the combination of setting a deadline and also just really simplifying what we did again was what made us able to. It makes us very creative, and we start spending all day together, and we start locking ourselves away, and it's really exciting. At the same time as being very tense.
We were buying and selling like crazy.
We've become very rich men because of our own album being delayed. No, that doesn't really make. For a while, it was good to have a deadline. We didn't really care what the deadline was associated with. Keith, who's the head of our record company, or one of the heads, said, "Give me the album when you want, but if you give it to me before this time, everyone will be really happy with me." So we said, okay, well, we'll try and we'll set the deadline. But then when we weren't going to meet that deadline, he said, well, never mind. And then there was all this that doesn't really mean anything. To me, shareholders, it's like the great unidentifiable evil body of so many bad things in the world are done under the guise of having to please the shareholders. You know, it's kind of the sort of, you can blame everything on them, but no one really knows who they are, kind of thing. So if we put out an album in time just to please the shareholders, that would have been a terrible thing. Everything is so fragile in everywhere. in the world, in our lives, everything. There's no point in planning too far ahead. It's just the way we approach things. Everything at the moment knocks me for six. You know, I can't believe what we get to do. I can't believe who we get to do it with. And so it makes you want to do it as much and as well as possible all the time. And so at the moment we're not even thinking about another record because we've drained ourselves. We've put everything we could possibly think of into this one. Everything I say has been discussed between us and speaks for both of us.
We've talked about this kind of thing quite a lot. Certainly in terms of time. I mean, Clocks was the last thing we recorded for the album.
And it was the thing that made us know that we'd finished it and got to where we wanted to go. Every album so far has been, even the first one, except that no one knew what we were doing before that, but even the first one, we can hear a journey from the first song written to the last song written, and the same thing happened with Clocks. You know, it came from In My Place, and probably on our new record, the same thing happened. You know, we had a bunch of songs from early on, but we knew the album was finished only when we'd got to another place stylistically, which also made it acceptable to keep the earlier stuff as well. I think it's impossible to analyse your band. When Paul McCartney was asked about the Beatles, he said, "Oh, you know, they were a great little band." You know, if someone like that says something like that about a band like that, if you sit there and go, you know, Parachutes is a wonderful, you know, it just seems ridiculous. Or you know, or Edge will say, you know, we're a great rock and roll band. You know, I think if your peers are saying that about their bands, you can't really sit there and talk about your own stuff with anything other than a detached abhorrence. Paraphernalia that surrounds you when you're a big band can often distract from the fact that you are a band. You know, once you start getting picked up in separate cars, and you separate this and separate that, and you have a producer and an engineer and 3 people doing this and 4 people making the tea, and you can sort of forget, like, who's that guy? My point is, it took us going back into a rehearsal room together, it's just the 4 of us, to remember, oh yeah, this is what we really love most.
This is why we started it.
Yeah, it was like 8 or 9 years ago when we first started. You know, we got it right then, and that's to get it right, that's what we have to do now, is just sit in a room with nobody else and try and impress each other with crazy chord changes.
It's been a long time we've been in the studio, and if you'd have asked us 6 months ago whether we'd have wanted to go on tour, none of us, I don't think any of us would have said yes. But now we feel like it's finished. We're ready to play it to people.
Yeah. So much of what we do is about playing live. Same with a number of bands. But it can really tailor how some of the songs sound when you think about playing them live, and it's really exciting. Touring's just the left hand of what we do, when it has 2 hands. You know, we have writing and recording and touring, and we need both of them. We would like at the moment to make the most entertaining evening in the world, because we're now at the point where we're putting our whole concert together, and that's all we're really focused on. Because, like I said, once you have awards and everything, and then you realise that isn't necessarily the answer, then you realise the kick you get out of other people's music, and then you realise that you're actually there to make people have a good time, to just go away feeling like we couldn't have tried harder for them, and there's been some amazing sounds and visuals and all that stuff.
I think maybe just music itself seemed kind of like some kind of puzzle or some sort of challenge. It's just interesting to me, always, ever since I was a kid. I used to do this thing with tape decks where there was a stereo in the house, and then I had a boom box, and I would record a guitar line on the boom box and then put that tape in the stereo so that it was playing back over the speakers, and I'd get another cassette and put that in the boombox and sing to the guitar sound that was coming out. So then you'd have 2 tracks, and then you'd put that in the stereo, put a blank cassette in and you just keep swapping tapes, and then you'd put like a drum track on it. And I think I was like 10 or 11 when I did that.
I'd love to hear some of those.
Yeah, those are great. I started playing guitar when I was about 10 or 11. And then I was just in a band, and the drummer wasn't really that good, and I had figured it out and asked maybe if I could play the drums, and he switched over to bass, and it's pretty simple. But just because, not for any reason, just because the drummer wasn't really that good, so I had to maybe try to make the band better. Well, it never really seemed like a feasible career direction. It was always just kind of for fun. Still is. But when you're a kid and you're learning to play guitar, you don't really do it as some sort of trade. You're just having a good time with it, and and then playing in local punk rock bands or neighborhood cover bands. It's just sort of for fun. It's funny to be here now and to see where it's taken us. Well, there were a few things. I could have just stopped, or I could have gone and played drums with another band, but I was young and it didn't seem like I had much to lose, really. I thought I'd just try something new, and I'd always demoed songs for fun and went down the street to a studio close to my house and recorded some more songs for fun, and it turned into the first Foo Fighters record. So, but it was really just because I'd never done anything like that before, and didn't think it'd be a big deal, just thought it would be a nice way to continue making music. The only people that ever made it feel stressful or made it feel like there was any sort of pressure was everyone else, doing interviews or I mean, all of my friends and family were really supportive, and we were having a really good time. I think everybody else felt a lot weirder about it than we did. Well, the first gigs were fun.
They were great. Like, God, we were so excited to be doing it. Happy to be playing, It was just, Dave had done that tape and it was so good, and everybody in the band was cool. I'd known William before, and Pat was just a maniac. He was fun to play with, and so it was just a really exciting, fun time.
First record wasn't really a band record, and it always seems to me like it's such a bizarre foundation for a band, just some demo tape that we kind of used as an excuse. I mean, we figured like, okay, well, here's what we'll do. We'll learn these songs, and we immediately started writing new songs like My Hero or Enough Space. Those came pretty quickly after we started jamming together.
This is funny. This is a funny story. I've told this before. I was driving down the street with my brother, and this is all due respect to Atlantis. I was driving down the road with my brother, and the first Foo Fighters single had come out. This Is a Call, and I think we were listening to either we were listening to the CD right when it first came out, or the song on the radio. And my brother said, and we loved it automatically. And my brother said, "That's the band you should be in right there, dude." I said, "Yeah, I wish." And I just met Dave a couple times, and we just really, automatically clicked as friends, But we didn't really keep in touch or nothing. We just saw each other here and there, different things, MTV Awards and stuff like that. And when it came time they needed a drummer, Dave first asked me if I knew a drummer, the asshole. And
I just figured that you were playing in that huge band, you wouldn't want to, bring it down a notch.
Well, I was happy to. Yeah, and then Dave came over and we jammed, and then I jammed with the whole band and been there ever since.
And it was tough for us. It was the first time I'd ever worked with like a producer. Gil Norton was the first person that ever came in and, really made you work on your music and your performance. And I'd never gone through anything like that before. So that was a crazy experience. But I think Nothing Left to Lose, the record that came out in 1999, that seemed like the first real band experience for us, just because we built the studio in my house in Virginia. It was very laid back, and it was more about writing songs and playing together and establishing each of our place in the band, just sort of, getting into the composition and arrangement and finding out what kind of players and what kind of band we really are. I think that album is that was the first real band record. So You know, and each one to me, it seems like they all progress and they all sort of make sense, you know. The first album being this demo tape that was recorded in 5 days. The album after that, we decided to produce like crazy, you know, really go in and work on it and make it a produced rock record. And then the third record was sort of a response to that, just in that we wanted to go into the basement and, you know, make some songs. And
I mean, there was a little bit of abandonment issues, maybe, a bit. But, you know, luckily, you know, the benefit of hindsight, you know, you realize that it was the best thing for all of us because it gave all of us time to go, you know, we all went and did our own things, you know. Less high profile, but we all did go do our own things and got our heads together. And in all honesty, I don't think I was ready to make the record. And I don't think we had the right idea of what we wanted to do at that point anyways, you know. I think it wasn't until we made something that we didn't like. Sometimes it takes doing something completely the wrong way to and this is the way my life has been since I was a child. It takes completely going the wrong way, you know, to get to the right way, you know. And with this record, I think, yeah, there was parts of it because I wasn't ready, you know. I wasn't physically ready, you know. My body had been through a lot of damage and stuff, and you know, once we finally figured out that we didn't like the way we were recording the record, you know, we didn't like the production techniques we were using and the technical stuff in the studio and the laboring over the song structures to a certain degree, like you know, it wasn't exciting sounding, and that had to do with a lot of things, and my physical health was maybe slightly one of the things, you know, but it was lots of different things.
for me, it worked out all right, just because I went out and played the drums for the first time and in a long time, had a blast. Queens of Stone Age are a great band, and it's a drummer's band. Their music's just really fucking fun to play when you're a drummer. So I had fun, but I mean, you know, it didn't take long before I missed Foo Fighters, the music and the people, and how lucky we are to have what we have. And so that was one of the things that really recharged my batteries, was just, you know, taking a big picture, taking a good long look at what I just walked away from.
Well, the record's a little rough because we just had such a hard time making the record, and ultimately it didn't turn out the way we wanted it. And so, wanted to get right back in there and make it work and get it finished. And we just couldn't have done it. The only way that we could have finished it is by taking that break. So it was hard, but had to deal with it. And
it was a pretty short break too.
It really wasn't all that long.
It really wasn't that long. It was a couple months. It was 3 or 4 months. I mean, when we went back to record it, we recorded it in a week and a half. You know, it gave us a sense that we were lucky to have this band, and we can have fun recording the music. You know, I've always had a hard time recording, you know, but once we finally got to just brass tacks and said, well, this is all the time we have. Let's get this done right now. Let's just fucking do it. And let's have fun doing it. And we recorded it like that, like nothing, like it was nothing.
Well, you have to imagine that we do this because we love to do it. And there's sometimes when it seems like a lot of work, and there's sometimes when it seems like more than just fun. But when you get to
it's never
place,
the playing that ever feels like that either.
Yeah,
it's
no,
it's
the
never
best
playing
parts.
music that feels like that. It's the traveling, you know, and you get tired. You get
Sometimes
tired.
you gotta take a nap.
Yeah, I guess. You know, you get tired, and you know, that's the work. The work is traveling and stuff, but the playing is the best part, without a doubt.
But above everything, you have to consider your priorities to be realistic. Like, the most important thing is that everyone's happy, everyone's healthy, we all remain friends, and you know, it's a lot more human than any of this. It's just kind of, you know, I don't want to die doing this. I don't want to ruin my life for rock and roll or whatever, because it's just not that important to me. And I love playing music, but there are other things that are a lot more important. So when something kind of brings everything to a halt, it makes you stop, take a good look at what you're doing and think, okay, well, really the most important thing is that everybody's happy and healthy, and got to keep that into consideration. So we just sort of came up with this idea, oh, well, maybe we should do, at first we actually were considering a hijack situation, which fortunately we never did. But we wanted Tenacious D to be these hijackers and for us to be different characters on the plane and then save the plane from the hijacking.
Nice it didn't go that way.
Yeah, I'm glad that that didn't happen. Although I've heard that Learn to Fly eventually got banned from some radio stations after 9/11, which doesn't really make that much sense. I think that we're getting better, but to me it's just all, it's simplified in a way. It's just all of the elements of the band we've had from the first record. I mean, there's heavy rock songs on it. There's an emotional quality that's run through every one of our albums, and this sense of melody, but this time it's all amplified and it's just sort of simplified. It just, you know, it's not cluttered up with tons of production or layers of guitars. The lyrics are really stripped down, and we do the same thing every album, where before we release it we say we're not going to tour as much as we did last time because it was too brutal, and we don't have this world domination state of mind. We're just kind of going out to play some shows. It's what we do best. We just go play some shows, and then it's inevitable. Every time it happens, we get on the road, and after like a year, you kind of go, oh my God, what are we doing? Life is passing us by. What are we doing here? And then you go home, and after sitting around for 2 months, you don't know what to do with yourself all day long. So you get back in the studio and you start playing. And all of a sudden you got another record, and all of a sudden people want you to go on tour, and it's really fun. I mean, I'm fucking knackered right now. Like, I am so tired. I've been tired for fucking a month now. But I swear, once you walk up on stage, it kind of goes away. And you see all of those people singing at you, and you playing the songs, and it's, you know, you get to celebrate every day. That's pretty great.
Cried after every gig, didn't you?
I'm really doing it, Nate. I'm really fulfilling my careerist dreams.
Steve and I had this little 4-track and started producing punk bands, and we just poured all the money into it, and that grew really quickly. There was a really hot scene there at the time with bands like Killdozer and Die Kreutzen, and I did a lot of work for Sub Pop and Touch and Go, and that kept expanding, and that's how bands like Smashing Pumpkins and Nirvana heard of me. It was from the underground punk things I did, and that totally blew up. I mean, I got to work with some amazing bands, and the whole time we were doing that, though, the reason we built the studio was we always wanted to record our own music, and it wasn't until like 94 or 95 when Duke and Steve and I started doing remixes for U2 and Depeche Mode and House of Pain and different bands like that really inspired us to want to write music again, because I had always been a musician before I became an engineer and a producer, and it was the remixes that really inspired us to start Garbage.
Before Shirley joined Garbage, we were kind of experimenting with noises and a few sketchy song ideas in Steve's basement. We had a little studio set up down there, and we really didn't know what we were doing. I mean, we were searching for a female voice, I think, because I think we just liked the idea of the contrast between this noise and a female melody. And that's really all that we had until Shirley came along. We had no direction whatsoever.
Yeah, I was in a band called Goodbye Mr. Mackenzie for almost 10 years before I met Garbage. So, yeah, I mean, I think it was an amazing experience. I mean, I learned an awful lot about not just playing and performing, but the music business. I mean, we were signed to 3 major labels before we bit the dust, and then I was in a sort of offshoot of that in a band called Angelfish for another year. That didn't last very long. and it was a little dysfunctional. So when I got the call from this bunch, I was out of there. I ran.
Steve saw Shirley on MTV one night. In fact, I think MTV, at least in America, played the Angelfish video once. It was on a program called 120 Minutes, where they play a lot of alternative rock acts and up-and-coming bands. And it was like 2 in the morning. I don't know what he was doing up, but he happened to tape it that night, and he came in the next day and said, I heard this woman singing, and played the video for Duke and me, and we just fell in love with her voice.
The initial meeting between the 4 beings that now make up Garbage was a little peculiar. We met in this really posh hotel, which I thought they were staying at, but in fact they had just walked from their shitty hotel to a posh hotel in order to impress me. So I was really impressed by them, because I thought, God, they must be really successful, and I was a little intimidated by the surroundings. And I think we had our first bonding moment when the waiter arrived to serve us some drinks, and he was just ludicrously posh, and we started pissing ourselves laughing, and I think that's when we knew at least we shared a sense of humour, if nothing else, and it sort of built from there. Well, they came to see me play a show live, which was the first taste I think they got of the diva that they were getting involved with, because I think I had a strop about the monitors that night, because I was so uptight about them being there, and it was a disastrous show, but I thought that they were willing enough to meet me after that show. They must be meant for me, because any man in the right mind would have run in the opposite direction.
We were just scared to stand you up at that point.
Natural gestation period of a Garbage record is, it seems, 1 year.
It's because we write in the studio. The songwriting process for us is we go in and hit record and then see what comes out, and you can't predict when a song is going to drop in your lap. I mean, it's really, sometimes you think you get an idea and you can force it, but then you're not happy with how things turn out. But the first album was probably the hardest, because even though we started recording, we didn't really know what it was going to sound like, and we had all these ideas flying in. We want to make stuff noisy, we want to make stuff poppy, we want to bring in some hip-hop grooves, whatever. And that's sort of, in a way, what defined us, is we threw all these reference points on the wall and kind of tried to see what would stick. And it was really Shirley's voice that sort of glued it all together. And really, even to this day, I think that's what kind of keeps it sounding cohesive.
Yeah, we never had any plans to make more than one record, really. I mean, we had no plans to do anything other than make that record. We weren't going to tour. We had no illusions and no master plan whatsoever. This whole thing has just been made up as we go. It's and one surprise after another as we go. So, no, we didn't feel right just going out and playing live, because I don't think we quite felt like the band we wanted to be. I mean, our intention was always to create a band. We were never a studio project the way we were often branded, 3 producers and a singer and all that.
We didn't suddenly wake up and play in front of, hundreds of thousands of people. From the first single onwards, it was a sort of slow climb up the charts, and we never really had a huge big hit single. It was just each single that we released did better than the one previous to that.
When the first record came out, I think it was a little frustrating for us, because everybody sort of focused on me and my production with Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins, and we wanted to talk about Garbage. We wanted to talk about the music that we wrote. And I think, really, as Shirley said earlier, it's because the songs, we didn't sound like everybody else. We didn't sound like a grunge band or a techno band, and it really caught people by surprise. And slowly but surely they started, I don't know if they were forced to, but they started acknowledging that there were really good songs on the album. And as the tour started to progress, the questions were less about what was Kurt Cobain like and what is Shirley like. It really, I think it just, like Shirley said, it also took about a year for that to happen. I think the press talked about us maybe sort of hypey and right away, because I think the record sounded fresh, but it did take a long time for an audience to capture an audience.
I just played Top of the Pops. Well, for me at least, when we played Top of the Pops, that was it. We've arrived. I grew up watching Top of the Pops in the UK, and to arrive there, and we were playing opposite Chrissie Hynde and the Pretenders, so it was a trip. It was like landing on Mars.
Yeah, we grew up knowing about Top of the Pops, reading in all the magazines, music magazines, all the British bands playing Top of the Pops, you know. We'd never seen it, of course, but all of a sudden there we were on it, these Yanks, and it was thrilling.
It's amazing, you know, when people are responding to something that we're creating, it's an incredible feeling. I mean, it's just the best feeling in the world. You know, having people come to our shows and looking down in the audience and they're all sweating and they're all grinning and everybody's having an amazing time. That I can't be cynical about that, and believe me, I've tried.
Pressure on the band during the recording of version 2.0.
I think we felt immense pressure when we started version 2.0. Not so much from the record company or from critics, but from ourselves. I think that we felt like we needed to prove that the first record wasn't a fluke, that we could sort of take everything we learned and try and push it out farther, push ourselves a little bit farther. And we didn't really talk about it, but it was hard to go out. We would go out to some clubs and see some of our friends in Madison, and they would say, wow, it must be really hard. You guys must be under a lot of pressure. And we're like, quit saying that to us. We don't want to hear that anymore. But I think it's because we also felt we had a little bit more confidence as a band, but we also wanted to bring in all these ideas, and it was a lot of tension in the recording of that record. And I think in some ways, I mean, we're really proud of version 2.0, but I think you can hear that.
Well, the first record was a weird experience, I think, in particular for Butch, because I think there was a lot of pressure on him on the first record. He had a lot more to lose than we did. Coming into the second record, I think all three of us, the other three, felt the same pressure because all of a sudden we had something to lose. And so we got more and more agitated, and so it was the same experience as Butch had. There was a lot of tension, and we were very uptight, and consequently probably didn't take as many risks as we maybe should have on the second record, or certainly didn't take as many risks as really I think deep down we really wanted to.
After version 2.0 came out, we went on the road and we were playing night after night for 20 months, and we played over 250 shows in 30-some countries over that period of time, and it was grueling. I mean, it was exciting, especially in the beginning, as those things go. And the shows are incredible. I mean, we found an audience all over the world, and that was momentous for us. But it took its toll on our personal lives to a degree, and on us. Physically, mentally, everything. But I think it really brought us closer together. We really became closer as friends. And the playing every night, you know, we began to read each other better, musically, personally. And it just, we grew as songwriters, we grew as musicians, and as a band.
Couldn't afford to make another record in the same vein as the previous two. I think we'd felt that we really had to take the band somewhere else in order to make it exciting for ourselves, first and foremost. And I think we wanted to just stretch ourselves and push ourselves into areas that maybe we hadn't explored in the past. And vocally, I felt that I really needed to shake things up. I was beginning to sing a certain way, develop certain habits, and I wanted to get rid of that. And I think we all felt that we just didn't want to fall back into the way we've recorded in the past. So I mean, in the past, I think we've really more sort of genetically engineered the songs, you know, sort of forced things together to fit in weird ways. And on this record, we started the recording session with about 3 weeks of just playing together in a room, and we had our engineer record those sessions, and then we sort of sifted through them and found all the hooks and stuff that we loved, and maybe some of the lyrical ideas that we loved. And then some of the songs were born just from a piano part that Duke maybe had, or a drum rhythm that Butch had, and we just all sort of crammed our input on top of all, like, the beginnings.
I think that for us, Beautiful Garbage, I mean, it's the most confident record that we've made as a band, but it's by far the best lyrics that Shirley's written, and the melodies are stronger, the phrasing is she definitely pushed herself in the phrasing, just the approaches she took to the songs. And a lot of Shirley's singing really helped us focus the album again. It's so strong, and she has such an amazing presence that we were able to veer off on all these tangents musically. Going way back to Phil Spector and the Beatles and Big Star and the Pretenders and the Kinks, and cutting in weird modern beats and using the computer to take songs in different tangents. But really the main thing is Shirley's singing is really, it's front and center in all the songs, and it's what keeps it cruising down the highway.
Androgyny is going to be the first single, and I think it's a great introduction to the whole album, because it really is a weird pop song that's built from a variety of different influences and sounds and vibes, and it's got these sort of urban, like the verse is sort of this got jilted urban production, beats and rhythm, sort of a la Timbaland and Missy Elliott, or at least sort of inspired by that. And then there's all these 60s surfer guitar riffs that come in the chorus, and I sound sort of like Prince or David Bowie or somebody like that. And then there's this big Philly soul moment in the middle of the song, and it's really peculiar, very schizophrenic. It's got all these contrasts all the way through it, and I think we feel that the whole album is sort of like that. In the first record, I didn't have very much confidence as a lyricist, and I really basically patched things together and, took some fragments of ideas that they may have, like if they had a couple of lines, I would say, they're great lines, let me use them, and I'd build around them, or I'd be missing lines and they would fill them in, and vice versa. I was the sort of collator of the lyrics in the first record. On the second record, I wrote all the lyrics, but I was really aware of how they felt and how I should maybe consider them when I was writing. I wanted to please them, basically. And on this record, I didn't feel the need to please them anymore. I felt I needed to please myself. I felt that I was I was sacrificing a huge chunk of my life at home to come in and record this record. And I felt that I really needed to do something for myself in terms of being a writer, and just fulfill some of my ambitions in terms of how I wanted to write. I've had the privilege of working with 3 men who are really talented, and they've taught me a lot about writing music, and I've watched, them from, the back of the recording room for a long time now, and I think, it does help. It does rub off, and I think I've from this record compared to the first record, my work has changed considerably. Am I sounding like a real big head? I am.
No.
Oh my, she's quite good, isn't she?
She's quite full of herself, isn't she?
There was always people really into it, and the people that were into it. And we even say nowadays, we got a new slogan, and it's kind of like, fuck me, fight me, or take a picture. That's kind of what it's been. You either like me, or you fucking want to beat me up. You want to take a picture? Or fuck me. And back then it was, I sold records out of my basement. I'd drive around to Cleveland, Ohio, Detroit here, and I'd sell records out of my car, and I sold 14,000 records doing this with nothing. This was before the internet or anything. And people loved it. And when I'd play concerts in Detroit, I'd get a couple thousand kids there, and I'd sell more T-shirts than the national acts were coming through, Bay acts. And I always knew there was something there. And I just felt like I was better than everybody else. So my mom used to say, she's like, because I wasn't so good in school, and I didn't go to school, and she's like, you need something to fall back on. I was like, I got it. My ass. If this don't work, I'm fucked. We sold a lot of copies, 14,000, 15,000 records, and it was doing good. And we decided it was, really time to take the next step. I was going to give a major label a shot again. When at this point I was like, I wanted to go the hip-hop route and just sell records independently and do my own thing. The money was pretty good. I don't know, 14,000 records. My dad, I borrowed like $6,000 from, and I bankrolled into like $180,000 in like 8 months, 9 months. I was like, this is all right. I might do this. And then we were like, well, independently I can be here, but I need a company because I want to be here. And so we invited every label out, and the only ones that showed up was Atlantic Records. They thought it was nuts. I had a little guy in the group, Joe C. We did a showcase show in New York, and we brought him out on a pony with an electric light-up suit, like the Electric Horseman. And he's like, I'm 3'9" with a 10-foot dick. And I'm like, we're laughing. I'm joking around, and like the record company's like, are you fucking kidding me? Who signed this kid? We were sponsored by Burger King. They bought us Puma tracksuits and shoes, and we used to move the salad bar out on Sundays and go and dance and get free hamburgers and just contests. And then I started to work for a DJ. I would carry all his equipment when I was 12 years old or something. I'd carry all his equipment. And I thought it was cool because I'd get to go to weddings and drink beer and hang out. And then from there, I started messing around with his turntables, and then I would record rap songs and all sorts of other stuff. So, well, Kid Rock started when I spent a lot of my informative years, for lack of a better term, in the ghetto. Just, and I came from a middle-class family, nice family, and I just, something about it, I was there DJing parties, basement parties, cabaret parties, and whatnot, and no one really knew my name, especially the kids in the hoods. So I'd come riding through or walk around, and people only knew me as the little white kid that could rock the turntable. Yeah, it was important for me to put together a band that, I knew with hip-hop, you could only go so far because you were limited with the progressions of live music and playing, and that blues music and that soul music and country and rock and roll that I loved. It was very hard to incorporate it with just being a DJ, and I grew up a DJ, but I also played instruments, so it was important to me to put together a band that was as diverse as anything ever created. To have a metal guitar player, to have somebody who can pick and play country, to have a drummer that's very versatile, and background singers and horns, so we'd have the freedom musically to do whatever we want. And that's the foundation of the band. It's always been for me. I opened a show for them in Inkster, Michigan years ago, and once again, I was the only white kid in the place. This and the other, I went on stage and got a great reaction from the crowd, and their DJ, whose name was D Nice, he called Jive Records, and I was trying to get a record deal at the time through some really shady drug dealers in Detroit I used to work with, and they were submitting tapes, and nobody wanted to hear it, and he called Jive, and he was like, man, there's this little white kid on stage that's got this whole place going. All summer long came a friend of mine who I've worked with for a lot of years, brought over Werewolves of London. The intro piano looped up over kind of a hip-hop beat, and I used to hate going to clubs because I can't stand this all night. Drives me up a wall. So being a DJ, I started seeing this going on in the clubs. They started doing these mashups where you hear these great classic rock songs paired with hip-hop beats. It was cool because you hear these great old songs and people could dance to them, so I was like, all right, I can deal with this. So he brought this over looped up, and I was thinking about that. And I started humming Take the Money and Run Steve Miller, which is the same chord, same progression. Sweet Home Alabama, which I used in the song, obviously. And then I go, as a songwriter and a musician, also a DJ, and having a hip-hop background, I go, I wonder if I could mash these two songs up and then write an original melody and lyric over the top of two classic records. I mean, that's like you don't play with fire, as they say, you don't pull on Superman's cape, you don't spit into the wind, as Jim Croce would say. Like fucking with Sweet Home Alabama, you're fucking with sacred shit. That's like, I'm gonna make Back in Black better. It's like, whoa, slow down. But when I started to pair it together and write the song, I was like, there's something new here. I knew the shit I would get. People would be like, it's Sweet Home Alabama, it's Werewolves of London. Then why didn't you do it? I wrote an original lyric and melody over the top of it, and if it wouldn't have been something new and fresh and original, I don't think that Warren Zevon's family, his son and his estate, would have let me use it. Leonard Skinner wouldn't have let me use it, and we all split it up in a third for each other, so it kind of summed it all up. Trying to find a song, like I don't know how to dress some days, because some days I want to be hip-hop, other days I want to be country, rock and roll, and I always say that, like, it's always kind of a joke. We're saying when we're doing a show and I'm doing my big tours in America, like, what do I wear? Because it doesn't look right singing old school hip hop and cowboy boots. And it doesn't look right singing country songs with my saggy pants and hat on backwards. And this is kind of with music, so to sum it all up was kind of really in this song, because it has traces of everything, of rock and roll, of country, and the beats being hip hop. the overall attitude. I was really into, you know, I got blown by hip hop when I was young. Which hip hop, if you really analyze, is the blues music of my day and age. Jazz and blues music influenced popular culture in every music form, touched every corner of the earth. And when hip hop came along, I was really very fortunate to be into it. It's touched everything in the same way. There's never been a musical or an art form that's touched popular culture like blues music or hip hop music. So to have both those backgrounds was really, you know, the people I looked up to, whether it's Bob Seger, Leonard Skinner, Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, whoever they are, they all had the blues background, you know, in music. I mean, the Rolling Stones, you know, they wanted to be Motown artists. My mom had a stereo where you turned it on here and had a turntable on top. I used to cut out pieces of felt and I'd sit there and scratch records. Wah, 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 wah. We had a guitar in the house and a piano, and you know, they'd try to get me to go to piano lessons. I used to hide in the closet. I didn't want to go because I didn't want to learn, you know, like bum 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 bum. I want bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba 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 ba. You know, I want a boogie woogie. So it was just, I don't know, it was just you know, why do we all like music? It was something that was in my soul, and like John Lee Hooker said, it's in them and it's got to come out. It was like a party that hasn't stopped. Everything I hoped it would be. Yeah, my thing, as much as I bitch about music and critics and this, that, and the other, my thing has never been to prove the critics wrong. My thing has always been to prove my fans right. That's where I sit. So it was like the people that believed here and knew that something was going on, just like I knew in my heart. I mean, I always say it in my records, I say, if it looks good, you'll see it. If it sounds good, you'll hear it. If it's marketed right, you'll buy it. But if it's real, you'll feel it. See, I kind of touched on it on the first record, and even all my early stuff. I don't know if anyone really picked it up, you know, with Only God Knows Why, Cowboy. You know, we're chicken picking in there and playing all sorts of stuff. But it's sometimes if you're not looking for it, it's hard to find the traces of it. I mean, you hear Beatles records and Stones records. There's country and blues traces all over those things, which is why I think they're some of the best records in the world when you really start to pick them apart and analyze them. But most people don't have time to do that. They just want to hear a song and make it feel good. So it was always something I was doing, but, you know, with Cocky, yes, it was just a little bit more just where I was at the time musically, and I got some lap steel guitars and some banjos and things, and was picking on them, and it kind of just felt, you know, what I wanted to do musically at the time. I like to live every day like it's my last, live it to the fullest. You know, the cliches everyone says, but it's so true. We're here so short, and I want to, you know, I was raising my son. I'd made money. I'd worked so hard for so many years. You know, I just didn't pop up overnight. I worked my ass off for everything I got. So when I finally made some money and really had the money in the bank and got a chance to look back and reflect, I was like, let's enjoy some of this money. And I don't want to be 50 or 60 years old and retire and like, oh, and then let's go to Florida and get a vacation home. I was like, let's have fun now with all this money. And I did. It was just, you know, with everything that went on with me and my extracurricular activities, for lack of a better word, you know, it was starting to turn into this tabloid shit, and I was like, and I sat back one day and I was like, man, what are you doing? I was like, what do you really love? You know, outside your family and my son, I was like, I love music. That's what I love. That's my passion. Make music. Do it the best you can. Quit fucking around. So I got focused again. And there was pressure, you know, because it was starting to go the other way, and I'm like, let me do what I love. Let me make a great record. Let me write good songs. Let me resonate with people. Put me in front of the people. People have joked, and it's kind of made a lot of sense that I'm the bastard child of Run DMC and Aerosmith. So to have them both on the stage, you know, performing those great songs, you know, of theirs, and throwing one of mine in the middle too, was just very humbling and very just, you know, it just felt right. It was like, you know, it's like I've been preparing for this my whole life, and I got let out of a cage. It's like, I'll handle it. The only thing I'm missing is more great songs, which I think everyone who's ever played music will say, or I don't know if they'll admit to, but I admit I need more great songs. I got a handful of great songs. I need arms full. I want arms full of great songs that resonate with people. Couldn't give the record away. I just wanted to scream at everyone and go, what are you, fucking stupid? Like, this record's great. Like, what aren't you listening to? And I knew that that was the case, because when critics would review it, they'd be like, this is horrible, and someone would be like, this is genius. There's no in between. Like, it's okay. I don't like okay. Just doing the working the system of the record company of let's get a single played on the radio and that never worked for me. But when I got to the people, that worked. When I got to talk to people, when I got to play live for them, when I got to be in front of the people, is what separated everything. And then it started to take off and grow into a snowball that they couldn't stop. When I wrote the first verse of Picture years ago, I remember being on a tour bus too, and there was some other bands there, and I picked and I played and I just had the first verse. I was like, that's a hit. I was like, I don't know what you guys are thinking right now. I've always been pretty confident. I was like, that's a hit. And I knew, and then when Cheryl came and did it, and I finished writing it and everything, when we made the song, I was sitting there and told Cheryl, I go, that's a #1 record. I went and laminated the lyrics, because I knew that they'd make somebody some money someday or be like something. I went and laminated them. After I wrote it, I was like, throw those in the vault, because that's a monster. We put the record out ourselves. We had to go around them and go to the people. So we begged a couple radio stations in like down south, it might have been in North Carolina or somewhere, and we got them to spin the record. As soon as they spun it, wildfire. I'd never had a friend, I had a cousin who committed suicide and stuff, but these are people you see at Christmas and Thanksgiving, and from a child you're growing up with someone you were very close with, when they pass, it just makes you look back at life and be thankful for everything you have and appreciate and love the people you're around. He would light up a room. You'd walk in there, he'd light this whole room up. He was just someone who was vibrant and lived life and brought a smile to everyone's face, no matter who you were. And it was like, people used to tell me, you can't have a little guy in your group like that. It's going to be a novelty. It's going to overshadow the music. I was very fortunate to have him in the group, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.